There's only one clear path to start growing the Jamaican economy by 10% each year, every year, for the next 10, 20, or even 30 years. That's the tourism industry. Some comparisons below between the Bahamas tourism industry and the Jamaican tourism industry. These comparisons were done in 2023, and well, Bahamas has added 3 million extra visitors since then, while Jamaica has not added a singular visitor since 2017. See description section for the table described below. Bahamas tourism industry. First, the population is 400,000. Second, visitors reach 7 million, which is 17.5 times the population. Third, GDP per capita stands at $27,500 US. Fourth, expected visitor growth in 3 years is 40%. Fifth, employment is 70% of the workforce. Jamaica tourism industry. First, the population is 2.8 million. Second, visitors are 4 million, which is 1.5 times the population. Third, GDP per capita is $5,200 US. Fourth, expected visitor growth in 3 years. Fifth, employment is 25% of the workforce. So the growth in the Jamaican economy that the Jamaican government was boasting about between 2021 to 2023, well, it wasn't actual growth, it was more like a bounce back after the pandemic lockdown in 2020. Think about it like this. Imagine a jerk chicken vendor in Jamaica who used to sell an average of $40,000 worth of chicken each day in 2019. Then, in 2020, because of the lockdown restrictions and all that, he only averaged $10,000 in sales each day. But in 2021, with the loosening of hours, he starts selling $20,000 worth of jerk chicken each day. Now, while the vendor should definitely thank God for the increased sales, he's not out there boasting about how much money he's making in 2021 because, honestly, he's still making less money than he was before the pandemic. Then in 2022, the vendor starts averaging $30,000 in sales each day, but he's still not boasting because, you see, he's still struggling to look after his wife and kids, just like he used to before the pandemic. His sales keep picking up, and by August 2023, he's earning an average of $38,000 each day. He's happy, of course, but there's still nothing to boast about, because he's still not back to where he was in 2019. However, the Jamaican government has been boasting about every increase in the economy since the easing after the 2020 pandemic lockdown. But really, it wasn't until the end of 2024 before Jamaica was actually back to where it was in 2019. And then the economy is projected to grow by the same 1 to 2% per year, just like it has been growing since independence in 1962. The government still doesn't have any plans or any vision about how to start growing the Jamaican economy by double digits each year. It's not because of any lack of ability, but really it's because of selfishness and being power hungry. Why the governments of Jamaica have been failing their people since independence. Many government ministers, honestly, are enriching themselves and their families through all sorts of business ventures, thanks to their insider knowledge and connections. So, they're clearly quite competent when it comes to planning and executing businesses, since they're doing it on the side and making massive profits, way more than 10% per year. The government ministers, well, they intend to leave their wealth to their children and grandchildren after them. But they just don't think the same way when it comes to the country as a whole. They're only doing just enough to win the next general election. They really don't want to start any large infrastructure program in case they lose the next general election and the other party ends up getting the praise for the work they started. Actually, the billionaire Lee Chin made reference to this, saying that this tribalism politics is what's holding back Jamaica. If this isn't the baggage of mental slavery on the part of government ministers, then honestly, what is mental slavery? Jamaican governments are still clouded by the effects of mental slavery, and that's why they just can't imagine a double-digit growth of 10% per year for the Jamaican economy as being normal for the next 30 to 40 years. 10% growth per year for 30 to 40 years. You know, it wouldn't even make Jamaica a first world country. It would just put Jamaica in line with the same GDP per capita as the Bahamas, Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago and so on. Why is this 10% growth hard for the Jamaican government to imagine and plan for? As we can see from the article below dated in 2023, the Bahamas government has planned for a 40% increase in hotel rooms capacity over the next 3 years, while the Bahamas tourism industry has grown by 40% in the last 3 years. Hence, they planned for the percentages in growth and delivered the percentages in growth that they had planned for. Why can't Jamaica do this like the Bahamas did it? I'm not an economist and I have very little knowledge of the tourism industry, yet for the past 2 years I've been saying that Jamaica need a 20% increase in rooms capacity each year for 10 years to start growing the Jamaican economy by 10% each year. I am a man of God and I know that my insights comes from God. However, after God brought the issue of the unnecessary sufferings of the Jamaican people to my attention and I start looking around, I could see clearly how the currently unskilled population and people in their 20s up to their late 40s and even 50s could be trained for 3 weeks and put to work in the tourism industry. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans who are currently earning less than a third of the current minimum wage through their various hustling and day work that they are doing to survive. These people could be put to work on a full minimum wage job. Why would someone refuse the full minimum wage if they are only earning a third of the minimum wage? That is a 300% increase in their wages. You know, this is also the best way to increase the current productivity level in Jamaica, by putting the people who aren't even registering in the productivity level into a full-time minimum wage job. And well, it also allows the low-skilled to take on an extra 2 or 3 shifts each week, that very important second job for those on minimum wage. The tourism industry, spread all across Jamaica, is the only industry that can provide this safety net for the Jamaican low-skilled workforce. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my new series titled Jamaica Needs 20 Giga Hotels Resorts to Match the Average Caribbean Tourism Visitor Numbers Per Capita. We're talking about 10 mega hotels with 1,000 rooms each to be built on each resort. That's a total of 200 new hotels to be built in Jamaica. Now, some key features of the UK 50 billion repatriation funding programme are as follows. First, 20 giga hotels resorts will be built across Jamaica over the next 10 years, 14 on the south coast and 6 on the north coast. Second, we'll be providing 300,000 permanent full-time jobs for low-skilled citizens in rural parishes across Jamaica and earning an extra $10 billion each year for Jamaica. Third, 300,000 affordable housing units to be built over the next 10 years. That's 30,000 houses to be built each year. Fourth, franchises for the first 100 large all-inclusive hotels will be given to FDI, foreign direct investment, over the next 1 to 5 years, from 2025 to 2029. Fifth, each hotel will cost approximately £200 million to build, totaling £40 billion, all paid for by the FDI's repatriation money coming back to Jamaica. Sixth, a national living wage is to be established in Jamaica, raising the current minimum wage by 15% each year, reaching $30,000 Jamaican dollars per week by 2030, payable to all hotel workers on minimum wage. Lastly, Jamaica's agriculture needs to start growing by 20% every year for the next 10 years and beyond. This is to create stability in the country as the tourism industry starts growing by 20% every year for the next 10 years.